Pretty much. It's a spectacle, but any movie, the heart is really the actors and the performances that they deliver, and I'm really thrilled that we have 4 wonderful actors today that were able to join us. We had others that unfortunately couldn't make it, but let's give a big round of applause and welcome for Richard Armitage.
So my first question is, where is that set?
The location of the movie? It's in a fictitious town called Silverton. Yeah, so it's
I would imagine that's because no real town would be able to withstand the real estate plummet after people see this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, ironically, we were filming in Detroit, and we were trying to get permission to film with all these neighborhoods, and there was a housing community. There was a brand new housing community, and half the houses weren't built. So we said, if we have those houses that aren't built, and we make them look like just destroying houses, it would fit perfectly. But the real estate agent said, well, wait a minute, we can't do that because the rates would plummet if people think there was a tornado here. It's just a movie, guy.
The way you're handling this, obviously, like you said, we've seen on YouTube now, there's been a rise of people shooting these things, and there's almost after every natural disaster now, you find handheld footage or captured footage of that stuff. How much of that did you look at? And then how much of that's created what you guys wanted to do in this movie in terms of, okay, we'd love to get that in there, or we'd love to get that kind of beat in there?
Well, what I've found is over the last 15 years or so, there's an enormous amount of video on YouTube of natural disasters and tornadoes in specific. And what I learned from that is what they actually look like and how they move and the wind and the rain and the gloominess and all that sort of stuff. So we use that as a guide to say, okay, that's the reality of what it looks like. So now let's try to recreate all of that. And we use what I call a first-person narrative approach, which is handheld cameras. It's not found footage, which is, to me, is great for genres that it's used properly, but I think it can get in the way of the filmmaking experience because you're so bound on trying to make it sloppy and you know, when you have a spectacle like a tornado, you want to be able to see it. So we have this slightly handheld, it makes it feel organic, but yet it still gets you into the world that you're watching.
Looking at just the scenes that you saw here for you guys, what was the physical end of this like? How much was practical? What did they put you through while shooting these sequences?
I think it was one of the most exciting parts of making the film is that on set.
He's a little bigger than you know, in real life. All I know is from The Hobbit.
Yeah, most of the things we were involved in doing were practical. You see in that short clip that I think it's a 16-wheeler truck that's dropped from a crane, and they draw a line on the ground and say, whatever you do, just don't go in front of this line when you run towards it, and that's real. We were also on wires, 100-mile-an-hour wind machine, rain machine, so most of the time you come away feeling that you've had the experience that these characters have had, that there's some kind of catharsis with actor and character. I never expected that, and I think it's something that you're really keen to pitch.
Well, I think it worked out well. I mean, I always wanted to make sure everything was safe and everything would be as horrific as possible with the wind and so forth. So I did all these tests with these wind machines, and we did all this tests with the rain. Only problem is when you combine rain and wind, you know, that those raindrops going down are now going 100 miles an hour right into your face. So all these
guys, like little daggers, actually,
had to put up with that amazing force, and you guys did a great job.
I did remember to heat the water. That was a big problem. It's freezing cold after being left out.
Yeah, we had. In my defense, I did say we have to heat the water because I worked on an underwater movie years ago called The Abyss. And I never forget being 20 years old, jumping in this pool at 90 degrees South Carolina heat, thinking, oh, it's gonna feel so good to jump in this nice ice cold pool. And it was 97 degrees, and it's like, it's hot. I'm like, oh, this sucks. But they said, if you're in that for 8 hours, you'll be happy it's 98 degrees. So I told the special effects guys, we need to heat all the water so that the actors don't get subjected to this really cool thing. What I didn't know was overnight, they didn't heat it, and the next morning, it was cold, so they turned it on, and it was ice cold water hitting all the actors. All I heard is this screaming, like, what's going on? And they're all like, ah! You know, don't look at me.
We sobered up pretty quickly.
No coffee needed.
What was the, for you guys, what is the most memorable thing that Ash did to you during this, or the most difficult thing that you physically during production?
We had a few nights, few night shoots with very cool, with this completely submerged in the Asian area and that was some of our biggest scenes, you know, long takes, basically drowning. And I made sure I had a slightly higher legendary show. So drowning just a bit more than I those were tough nights, but great. You can do the tough and difficult parts of the wall with playing that cold water and stuff. I think it makes for a better film and a more exciting experience. Those are the things you remember.
I think for myself, I can't speak for Jeremy, but we play cameramen in the film, and for me, one of the hardest and most exciting things was trying to look like a cameraman and, you know, master those angles and move fluently the way they do. And I'm hoping that in the film, Steve, I don't know if you'll tell me, but I hope that some of my footage is accurate.
Yes, they're actually, everybody has a couple of shots that they actually shot that ended up in the movie.
Yes.
It's terrible.
For me, it was going against those wind machines that are blasting 120-mile winds in your face, while these two guys that I don't really like anymore, who would throw these piles of dirt and debris and leaves and branches into the wind machines as they come smacking us in the face. And that's what made it great for us, because the actual presence of the tornado, without all that stuff, it wouldn't have been there. And we, you know, these guys that accomplished that and gave us something really good to work with, to communicate and be able to feel this power of what's going on around us. And although it turned out beautifully and great, it was pretty difficult. But it was, I thank these guys for that, because they made our jobs easier.
We're going to take some questions from the audience here in just a moment. One of the things that was most striking in the footage, and I would assume this had to be a big thrill for you guys, fire tornadoes?
You know what, guys? I tell you, the day around when we were shooting that sequence, I was reading the script and going, come on, Steve, this is ridiculous. And that night we were kind of trawling through the internet. On YouTube there was a fire tornado somewhere in Australia that is kind of unbelievable. I think it was a bushfire that had been caught up into a tornado, and we kind of came in all into the footage. And at every point during the making of the film, there were moments like that. And the fact that that footage was captured on an iPhone or something like that made me realise why this film was going to be so exciting.
Well, let me ask you real quickly. You know, you obviously playing these huge, amazing, heroic characters like Hobbit, you know. I like to now suddenly have to play an ordinary man who isn't a superhero who just has to deal with this extraordinary event. I mean, what was it like as an actor?
You know, one of the things when I was preparing for the role, I was in New Zealand shortly after the Christchurch earthquake, and I remember seeing news footage of guys that had gone to work in the morning and their building had collapsed, and they were carrying out their colleagues into the street and then going back into the building. And it really made me realise that in the course of the day, these guys had been turned, you know, they were just stepping onto the plate, they were becoming heroes, ordinary people, and that's really the essence of who Gary Morris is just a school teacher that is called upon to become a hero. He doesn't know that he can do it, but he goes in search of his lost son, and it requires, you know, incredible courage and bravery that he just does. Yeah, it's amazing.
And I just want to give a shout out to Sarah Wayne Callies, who couldn't be here today, but she plays Allison, a storm chaser, and again, it was a phenomenal cast to work with, and she was great, and does an amazing job. So I can't wait till you guys can see the movie and see her and everybody else in it as well.
She plays my boss.
All right, so first question.
Hi, my question is actually for Richard. My first introduction to your work was North and South. I was just wondering if you prefer a certain genre. I've seen you in fantasies, Hobbit, period pieces with North and South, and obviously modern. Do you have a favorite genre? Why?
I actually don't have a favourite genre, but I do like working from literature. I think that's always interesting when you've got a source material to go back to, keep going back to. I've also always wanted to play someone that was based on a real person, living or dead. But with this movie, I think the thrill was finding something which felt very real. These people wouldn't feel like fictional characters. Going from fantasy into something which is hyper-realistic, hyper-naturalistic, is really quite fulfilling. So, but in answer to the question, no preferences.
Yes.
Hi, Rich. Hi, guys. I basically want to find out, since you've been doing The Hobbit for so long and you're wearing all that makeup and have the heavy clothes, how does it feel to actually not have to do that after so many years?
I wrapped on The Hobbit on a Friday night when I took all the prosthetics off and then got on a plane and started work with Steve on a Monday morning in what I thought was a fairly kind of light, easy to work with costume. And then he turned on the wind machine and went from one extreme to the other. But as I said before, I think when you put your character through the situation that you're going to experience as realistic as possible, like we did on this film, and maybe not so much on The Hobbit, there were no real dragons, but I think you really feel like you've connected with the guy, and I think we all feel that we've been put through it at some point.
Well, I know, Jeremy, obviously you started Peter Pan, DJ Hogan the build for that. Obviously, The Hobbit, Jackson builds these unbelievable things. This is sort of the opposite scene where you used as much location as possible, and then you guys then had to introduce the fantastic into these real locations. What was the shoot like for this in terms of on set? Where was the look? How much was real, and then how much did you guys do post?
We tried to do whatever was directly surrounding the actors practical, and then expand the scope digitally for everything else. And obviously, you can't make a tornado real, but you can have the wind blowing, you can have debris, you can have, like you said, a truck fall right in front of you, and you can have other things like that. You have wire work where people are on, and then you kind of mix it together with some of the digital techniques. So it was a mixed bag.
It looks like you really hid the illusion well. Like at any point in this, it all looks like it is real world.
Yeah, well, I'm really proud of it. In fact, I showed the movie in its near complete state to Jim Cameron, and he was like just saying nothing but praises. It was great because having worked with him for so many years and then finally being able to do a project on my own, show it to him and get feedback and all being very positive and so forth, it was fantastic. He had a lot of good compliments to say, and it's kind of ironic. He had one suggestion for a little prop to kind of incorporate towards the end. When you see the movie, you understand where it comes from. And for me, it was just fun because that was sort of full circle from when he showed Titanic to me at a very early stage. I had a suggestion for how to change the ending, and he incorporated that by having Rose drop the diamond by herself as opposed to a different aspect. And this is why I'm telling the story, because Bill Paxton was in that scene originally, so all things lead to Bill Paxton. That is absolutely correct. You played the Bill as well.
I played Bill's son in Frailty. It was his first time directing, it was my first time acting, so it was great to see him today.
And Max was the head of McCoy.
Yeah, I played one of the sons of Apple's McCoy some years ago.
He really does open that door.
Yeah, I can't believe it comes back to Bill.
Yes.
Hi.
Nice to meet Peter Pan, all grown up. Yes, I am going to focus on Richard. Death because I work with the one wing, not dead. So hi from everybody from the one wing. Speaking about doing literature, you're doing the Crucible in London this summer, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Awesome morality play. So my real question though is, I know you're a Tolkien fan, it's kind of why we all love you. When you were a child reading Tolkien, was there a character that you saw yourself in back then?
I was always fascinated with Gollum. The book was read to me in primary school, and I remember the school teacher doing just the most incredible impression of that voice, and Tolkien described it so brilliantly. I'd go home and try and do it myself, and then I was in a stage production where I was playing an elf, but I was always covetous of the guy that was playing Gollum, so... Andy Serkis is in the building, actually.
Yes.
For whoever wishes to answer, I was just curious, what it was like to be on the set when it was all full and actually looked like a disaster scene?
I remember going to the scene where they had the car lot, and we got there and everything was kind of all neat and nice, and then after lunch I came back, everything was destroyed. And it was like took a turn, and that was a day where we had the fire tornado. So for me, it was just, I was playing with all these flipped cars and just, you know, like a child in a candy store. Just like, it was, I loved it. It was exciting for me. It was just, it was cool to see what a natural disaster looks like. And I showed up.
And you had some great stuff at the school.
Yeah, we showed up at school.
You ever brought to school and they did some cool stuff. I showed up on that call-up day. I wasn't working that day, but I was knocking out, so I went. And there was people driving around to the school. I think it was at university.
We went to college.
And a woman drove past me and she was, what happened here?
I'll never forget, because as a director, you want post-construction and you want it to look like post-tornado-like. And I had to deal with the guy who was in charge of making sure we didn't damage his building. So he's walking around with me and I'm saying, okay, put all this debris here, and he's looking, and he had no idea what we were going to do. But the art department put plywood and then made it look like the wall had collapsed and all this. And he came in and he looked, he's like, oh my God! And I'm like, don't worry, it's fake, we'll be okay when we're done, we'll just clean it all up.
I never told that woman what was going on, so she could be in a bunker somewhere. Just
There was a PA who was specifically attached to me because, you know, I'm a wild child, but it was like, where's Jeremy? Always in a flipped car somewhere, so it was, I had fun on that set. It was a lot of fun.
I think we have time for one more.
Okay, just a quick thing, once And a question for Richard. Did you write the backstory for this character? Like you do with your
I did actually. There's a kind of little family story which was quite important for where we were taking the two boys and the father. This was a mother that's trying and trying to hold the family together. I also went and met an American high school teacher just to find out how that was going to be. And even though you only glimpsed it very briefly, I just felt that it was important to root him in somebody real and something that would feel like Middle America. So,
yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for bringing the footage. It was tremendous. So we have one more guest.